Hey guys, this is David, CrusaderArts. I'm here to show you guys how I managed to set up a lot of my projects and stuff like that with Corridor, Red Room, and Supernova. And those projects are fairly, well, two are sort of similar. One is more different because it's more organic looking and a lot more organic looking shapes and different weird positionings and more abstract. So I'm showing you here, this is Corridor, this is the project for Corridor, and we're going to be going over how I set up this project, how I do the basic shapes and stuff like that, and showing you guys some tips and tricks and stuff like that as I go along. So, without further ado, let's get started. So how I made this basic shape here, let me actually duplicate it first, move it over, is that I go and get a polygon, which I'll also move over, move it up, there we go, set it to triangle, rotate it 90, oops, 90, there we go, and I make it editable by pressing C. Go to the vertices mode and select all the vertices. Go to bevel it a bit. Then I select the polygon. Go to extrude, turn on create caps. Then extrude. I then tone the Phong angle down to 20. And I decrease the size, I duplicate it and decrease the size to 60 on the x-axis and 60 on the z-axis. Increase the size of it on the y-axis to 130. Move it over so it's going through on both sides. Adjust the height of it so that's right in the center on the z-axis. And a little more than that. There we go. Then I get a bool. Oops. And then bool it other way. There we go. So now it's like that. Let me actually increase the size of this a little bit, so that way it's more like the original here. There we go. Then I rotate the whole bool. Let me actually do this instead. Rotate the two polygons so it's like that. Oops. 180. Move it down. And then do current state to object on the bool. Select children. Connect objects and delete. And I then go to the polygon mode. And then I have to select all. Go to untriangulate settings. Create n-gons. And then extrude inner on all these. Then extrude up. And I then bevel, actually no, before I do that, I'm going to bevel all the edges here a little bit. So it's like that. Then I'm going to, come on, I hate this camera sometimes. I'm going to select each of these edges, of these faces, and I'm going to extrude inner, extrude outwards, like that. That's kind of how I got the basic shape there. Except I also did this as well. I got a plane. Move it over. And rotate on the Z-axis there. Move it over. Make sure it's completely lined up if you want to do this, so we can have like that proper like light paneling on the side here. So that way it's like perfect. It's not quite perfect. There we go. So that way it's like that. Decrease the size to like 100 or maybe a little less than that. Just enough that it comes all the way through. So 60 or so. 60 by 150. Yeah, that's perfect actually. Actually, move that over a bit. Increase the length. Like that. We're going to decrease that to 1 by 1. Make it editable. Select a polygon. US. One more time. There we go. And then we're going to bevel. Untick. Make sure preserve groups is unticked. Bevel it a little bit. Turn the falling angle down to 20. That's how I got each of the paneling there. I then get a symmetry. And hang on here. This has got to be on the Z. This has got to be like right in the center. So let me get this. Move it over there. I'll get all this, put it in a group, and hide all of it. There we go. And then we'll symmetry it. Like that. There, that's what I wanted. So that's how I get that, and then I set up all the lighting and stuff like that in here. And that's kind of how I get that basic shape that I had here with the other version there. I then set up all my materials and everything. Have all these. A lot of it is like all these like crystal, like clear looking materials. Not a whole lot of maps or anything or roughness. A lot of it's just really like kind of perfect in a way. So even then, I just have some basic materials here. There's some glassy looking materials on a few places, like on those pyramids. And I have some darker looking materials for the sphere and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I set it up for corridor. And if I just delete that and that, show these again, go back into the camera. I can show you a render here of how it renders. Let me decrease the size here. Render it real quick. You can see it's got a lot of depth of field here and all sorts of stuff. It's got some lights on the top, and it's got like a little bit of a gate back here and all sorts of stuff. So that's kind of how I set that basic shape there. I have that gate back there, and I have all these pyramids and spheres and stuff down there. And I've got some lights around like the border of here, around these borders of the extruded part. Got these wires, which are pretty much just a bunch of random squiggles that are in a sweep. And then I symmetried that over. There's a lot of symmetry and stuff like that in this one, and that's kind of how I just did it in this. There's a lot of like really complex looking paneling and stuff on here. Just mess around with it, see what you can do, and if you just try and see. And here's a little tip for people who are trying to go for realism, is that when you look at a real object in a real space, you'll notice that on the object it's never perfectly sharp. So unless it's like a needle or something like that, that I would understand. But if it's like an edge on a cube or something like that, or a block or something like that in real life, it would never be perfectly sharp. So that's why you just kind of gotta like bevel like everything, if that makes sense. So let's move on to the red room. Oops, red room. It's a lot of the same with this one, except it's just got different positioning on a lot of the objects here. And it's also oriented in a weird way. It's going upwards. And the materials, again, are pretty simple. Let me render this for you guys. Oh, right here. Come on. There we go. That's a render of Red Room. Again, pretty simple, just a lot of beveling and really simple, kind of clean sort of look. I didn't want to go for a whole lot of complexity, but if I wanted to go into a whole lot of complexity, I could just add on a roughness map, or I can add on a displacement map or something like that. So, a lot of this is just the same as what I was doing back in Corridor. All it is really is I added in some color with this environment that I have here. It is Octane Daylight. And I changed the colors a bit, so if I go to the daylight tag, I changed the colors to like a lighter blue and a reddish looking color. I increased the power a lot, changed the north offset, stuff like that. So let's move on to Supernova. Now this is a lot more complex. This is actually a real flow model that I got from the program RealFlow. You could be able to find it at Next Limit. And there's also a plugin now for RealFlow. And if I go here to fluids, you can see it's got the polygonal mesh, which is like a pretty much just a low poly version of the high poly model, which is on a subdivision surface under smooth mesh with smoothing and a spline wrap. The spline wrap is very important because it uses this profile to wrap it around the spline here, so it kind of has this kind of shape. If I turn that off, it looks a whole lot different. It looks like that, which is pretty much just a bunch of water hitting a surface. But if it's has the spline wrap, it looks really cool. It looks like a lot more swirly and flowing looking. So then I also set up a volume in this scene as well, which you can't really see because it's I disabled it, but if I enable it, you can see all this volume and stuff here, where it has like kind of that smoky look. This scene takes a while to render, so I'm not going to render it, and I wanted to keep this fairly quickly. It's got these platonics here, which are just a bunch of like unique looking platonics that I just made through here. I just made a platonic, and I messed with the surfaces a bit, beveled it. Of course, you got to bevel everything if you want to make them a little more realistic. And we got this plane back here, which is adding that black area back there, and the sphere here, which is a glowing sphere. And then I got the camera tag with a bunch of all sorts of exposure and gamma correction and bloom and all sorts of stuff. So that's kind of how I set up this project. If you look closely at some of the models and stuff like that, all it is really with the polygonal mesh and the high poly mesh is that it's just all I did is I just decreased the scale for the polygonal mesh. Like if you go here, it's at 0.95, 0.95, and 0.03, and then on the smooth mesh is just 111, and it's got the deformers on there as well, which just don't really matter if it's at a different size. But yeah, that's kind of how I set up this project, and yeah, so that's kind of all that I can really want to show. And there's a lot of different things you can be able to do with C4D as long as you put your effort towards it and try to learn it. And by the time you get the chance to be able to learn pretty quickly about the how you model and how to do fluid sims and volumetrics and all sorts of stuff, how to do materials. It sort of just comes to you. Like if I just set up a basic scene here with just a cube, I can be able to set up the scene like really quickly. All I have to do is just apply material, bevel it, do whatever modeling stuff I want to do to it, and then add an environment, add some volume, whatever to it, add some more objects if I wanted to, add some deformers and fluids or volumetrics or other stuff. So, but yeah, that's basically how I do my projects. So if I go back, it's pretty much all in a linear format, and all of it's kind of grouped together and neat. Well, I try to make it neat. This one's not really neat, but if I go back to Corridor, it's pretty neat here. All of them are in their own individual groups and stuff. So anyways, yeah, this is how I do my projects and stuff like that. All I wanted to really do is break down how I did my projects and how I do basic modeling and stuff like that, give you some insight on how I do it. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope to see you again in my next VJ loop or tutorial or video breakdown or animation or whatever you may see. So yeah, we'll talk then. So see you guys.